Awesome, recording. Okay, so 2-3, we're going to finish 2-3. So 2-3 continued. Actually, I should say 2-2 and 2-2-3 continued because I mixed them together. Okay, so I want to start actually giving you a problem and see how you do, just to sort of like warm you up from last time before I add anything new. Okay, so I want you guys to simplify this. Give that a try. Okay, anybody who's just joining us, a couple you just joined, I just gave this problem as a warm up. So give it a try. Okay, let's see how you stop. Okay, here we go. Did you get -30? Maybe I did it wrong, so hold on, let's do it. All right, -10 plus -30 plus -10. They're both negative, so I add them and keep the negative, so that would be -40. The next two, -40 minus 14, so a minus is a negative. So I'm going to add them, they're both the same sign. We're going to add them and keep the sign. So 40 plus 14 is 54, -54 plus 24. And then I have a -54 and a +24, so I'm going to subtract them. So 54 minus 24 would be 30. And the 54 is bigger, so it's going to be -30. Questions? Yeah, good. Good. I see the thumbs. Awesome. 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 All right. Somebody here has your video off, so make sure you turn your video on. I sent a message, but I guess you didn't see it, so I'm going to say it out loud. But make sure your video is on. If your video is off, you don't get counted for attendance. So make sure you're on, please, please. Thank you, because I do keep an eye on you all throughout the whole class. I always look at your faces to see how you're doing. Okay, awesome. Okay, let's add on to what we know. Okay, so now here's the algebra part. We're gonna do a little tiny bit of algebra. So let's add algebra to it, a little bit of algebra. Let's add some algebra. Smiley face. Okay, so we're gonna do something called evaluate, which you did before. And I think you'll know what it is when you see it. Okay, evaluate is the directions. 3x minus y when x is -4 and y is 6. So just to remind you, when we evaluate, we're actually substituting. So evaluate in this particular case means substitute and simplify. Now, evaluate can mean a lot of different things for each problem, but the way this is written, it means take x, put the -4 in for x, take y, put the 6 in for y, and figure out what it is. So 3. Now x is going to come out. Instead of x, I'm going to put -4 in. Minus y. Instead of y, I'm going to put the 6 in. And then we'll evaluate. So, oh, we got multiplying. We haven't talked about this yet. Okay, so when you multiply with a negative times a positive is a negative. So don't worry about that yet, because I'm going to go over all that next. I didn't realize I even put this in here. Okay, so -12 minus 6. Just worry about this part. -12 minus 6, they're both negative because minus is a negative. So I'm going to add them, which is 18, but they're both negative. So it'd be -18. I'll go over multiplying here in a minute. I didn't realize I even did that. Shame on me. All right, 2. It's still evaluate. X plus 4 minus y when x is 3 and y is -1. Now this one you have to pay a little bit of attention to. All right, so x is 3, so I'm going to put 3 in for x plus 4. Now that minus sign is a negative, but it's still a minus sign. So I'm going to put the minus because the only thing I'm allowed to change, I'm going to put parentheses around it. The only thing I'm allowed to change is y, and y becomes -1. I don't want you to think you take -y out and put 1. You only take out y to put -1. So then we're going to add them. 4 plus 3 is 7. Minus a negative, the opposite of a -1 is a +1. And the answer is 8. Just remind you, think of it as opposite of -1 is +1. That's what that means. Good? We're going to do one more. Three. C minus -d plus E, where C is 10, D is -8, and, oh, my pen just turned off, hold on, and E equals 5. And again, you start to be really, really careful right here with that D. You're only allowed to replace D, just D. All right, C is 10 minus negative. Now I replace D. So these two stay, they stay. And I'm only allowed to replace D. D is -8 plus 5. All right, so what the heck do I do with this mess right here? Well, let's talk about it. So, whoops. Okay, so I'm not going to do anything yet. I'm going to simplify first. So 10, now minus a negative of a negative. So opposite of the opposite of a negative. So we're going to keep this, hold this a second. We're going to do this first. Parentheses first, like Penn does. Opposite a negative. What is opposite of -8? That would be 8. So opposite a -8 is 8. So opposite a -8 is 8. That negative, that minus is going to keep. So all I did was simplify what I underlined. Now I can simplify the whole thing. 10 minus 8 is 2 plus 5, which is 7. That was a tough one. Questions on any of that?
Hey, Ms. Garrett, what's your for number 2? What's your answer? A +8 or a -8?
I don't remember. Hold on. It was. Whoops. Positive.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to finish up the section with real world problems. So I'm going to be writing a lot. I try to make these as short as possible. So, okay, so real world problems. If you did the homework, you probably saw some of these already. Okay, here we go. Whoops. If the temperature was -7 degrees Fahrenheit, which you guys never have here, which is awesome, at 6 a.m. and it rose 4 degrees by 7 a.m. and rose another 8 degrees by 8 a.m. What is the temperature? At 8 a.m. So it's sort of kind of like an integer problem. So if the temperature was -7 degrees Fahrenheit at 6 a.m. and it rose 4 degrees by 7 a.m. and it rose another 8 degrees by 8 a.m., what's the temperature? Well, we start with -7 degrees. I'm not going to put degrees, with -7. Then we are going to add 4 degrees. That's for 7 a.m. And then it went up again another 8 degrees. Whatever this is, it's going to be our temperature at the end. So first two, -7 plus 4. They're opposite signs, so I subtract them. 7 minus 4 is 3, but 7 is a bigger number, that's negative. So it's -3 plus 8. I'm going to simplify that. So -3 plus 8, they're also opposite signs, so I'm going to subtract them. 8 minus 3 is 5, and 8 is bigger, so it's going to be +5. So the answer would be 5 degrees Fahrenheit at 8 a.m. Good. I'll go on to new page, got another one. Okay, I went back to 1, okay, good. So I went to 2. The highest point in Asia is the top of Mount Everest. At a height of 29,028 feet above sea level. Hold on. The lowest point is the Dead Sea, which is 1,312 feet below sea level. Here's the question. How much higher is Mount Everest than the Dead Sea? And I'll wait to give you a chance to write that all down. Okay, so Mount Everest is 29,028 feet. And the Dead Sea, that's above sea level. And the Dead Sea, we can also think of it like, here's Mount Everest. Mount Everest. And the Dead Sea, I actually want to talk about this. Since it's below sea level, we think of it as negative 1,312 feet. So if you sort of picture it, from ground level up is 29,028 feet, but from ground level down is negative 1,312 feet. So if you want to know how much difference it is, we're going to subtract them. So 29,028 minus 1,312. Okay, I don't have any work area, so we're going to write real small. Let's see, way over here, 29,028 minus 1,312. So we're going to subtract them. We get 6. 2 minus 1 is 1. I got to bar over the 0 and make that an 8. Make that a 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. 8 minus 1 is 7. And 2. So I have 27,716 feet. Good. All right, I got one more. It's a little longer, so I'm going to try to write a little smaller so I can fit it all. This is me attempting to write small, sort of hard. Okay, that was not good. Hold on. You buy work shoes at a local store. You receive your credit card statement. This probably sounds like real life, huh? That you owe them $196 from your recent purchase. But you returned one. But you returned one pair of shoes because it didn't fit. I'll just leave it like that. They were $52 shoes. And you returned another pair worth $28. How much do you really owe? We've done this. We go on shopping and buy stuff, and then we get home and go, I need to bring it back, right? So 196, we're going to subtract the 2 off. We can figure out how much we have. So 196 was our bill. I'm going to do one at a time. I'm going to subtract 52 because I returned it. So that means I take it off. That would be 4. That would be 4, 144. And I take my 144 and I'm going to subtract my 28. I'm going to have to borrow. You owe $116. Now, there's one thing I want to say about the online class versus in class, and this is something that I don't want you to get not used to doing. Is I know online with all the my math lab that you don't have to put words. So when I say word problems and real world problems, you always want to end it with words. So see how I put UO 116, and the last one, what I put it's 2020 feet, and I circle it. So when you're doing your My Math Lab, they already do that for you. They just want the number. But when you get into a classroom, you need to end it with words, just like I did. You owe $116. Okay, that's something really important. All right, that section's done. Any questions?
I'm almost done. Let me get the last of it.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Somebody just joined us too.
I've been sitting here since 9:40 and it just now let me join.
Real, it's Amanda. It's Amanda.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's 9:40. Your name just came up. What the?
No,
Why?
I've been sitting here the whole time. I even
Well,
sent you an email. Are we having class? Because it wouldn't let me join.
I don't know why I didn't let you join. That's all right. I'll put you down as here, but I guess you'll have to go back to the video and watch. But I've been watching this. You can ask everybody else. I've been watching this. This has been in front of my face the whole time, waiting to let people join. Your name just came up, so I don't know why.
I don't know.
So I don't know if it's Wi-Fi. I don't know. So anyway, we just finished this section and we're going to the next section, but it's just pretty much a review and then a couple word problems. Hi, everybody caught up? Everybody good? Okay. Let's go to multiplying and dividing these. Give me 1 minute. I'm just going to check one more time, make sure I got everybody in. Hey, one more time. One of you doesn't have their video on. Make sure you turn it on. It's got to be on. 2 of you don't have your video on. Make sure it's on or I don't count you as being here. All right. That's my last time I'm saying it. That's it. I don't see a video. You're not here. Okay. 2, 4. Multiplying. Try to make that nicer. Oh my gosh, I can't write. And dividing integers. So now that you have adding and subtracting down, we're going to look at multiplying and dividing. All right, so let's just talk right to the rules, what I call the rules. There's not rules, I just call them rules. Rules. Oop. Okay, when you multiply, if you have, this is for multiplying, when you multiply, oh, when you multiply a positive, I'm going to put it in parentheses, meaning times a positive is a positive. So 2 positives multiplied together is a positive. A negative times a negative is also a positive. So when you multiply, 2 negatives become a positive. And if you have one of each, if you have a positive times a negative, it doesn't matter which one's bigger, like adding and subtracting, it's always a negative. And I'll just put the other way around just in case you forget. It doesn't matter the order, but if I have a negative times a positive, that's also a negative. So as long as one of them is a negative and you're multiplying, if one is negative, one positive, it's always negative. If they're the same, they want it being positive times a positive is a positive, and 2 negatives multiplied become a positive. It's sort of kind of the same for dividing. So if I have, and again, I'm going to put like a fraction, a positive divided by a positive. Now that could also be written as a positive, I'll put in parentheses, divided by a positive. Different ways to think about dividing. So that equals a positive. So if I divide two positive numbers, it's also a positive. If I divide two negative numbers, negative divided by a negative, it's just like multiplying, it becomes a positive. If I have one of each, let's say I have a positive in the numerator and a negative in the denominator, positive divided by negative, that is still a negative. Negative wins. When you multiply, negative wins. If it's one of each, negative always wins. It's always negative. Or if I had the negative in the numerator and a positive in the denominator, it's still negative divided by positive. It's one of each, and the answer would be negative. Sometimes it gets a little confusing because once you do adding and subtracting, and we talk about adding and subtracting rules, multiplying and dividing are a little different. You just have to get used to them. And remember, when you do your problems, remind yourself, am I adding or subtracting? Am I multiplying or dividing? And then think about the rules a little bit. Okay. Everybody had a chance to write that down? Everybody good? Checking faces. Good. Okay. Let's practice. Practice. Practice makes perfect. Now, before I even start, I want to talk about something first. Okay, so multiply signs. Different way to talk about multiplying, but one I'm going to avoid totally for now on, and I'll tell you why. So before you've seen multiplying, you've done something like 2 times 3, right? Or you've seen 2 times 3 or 2 times 3. And you've also seen 2 times 3. They're always the same multiplying, right? This one, I'm no longer going to write the X, and that's because we're doing algebra. Once you get to algebra, you don't want to use X for multiplying because X is a variable. So I'm never going to write this anymore. I'm either going to write one of these combinations or multiplying. Okay, so that's a habit I want you to get into too. Don't write X for multiplying from now on. Once you get into algebra land, that's what I call algebra land, we don't use X for multiplying. Okay, so that being said, times -3. Okay, I'm multiplying. So first think 5 times 3, because 5 times 3 is 15. And then you can think about your sign. I have a positive times a negative. When they're opposite signs, the negative wins. So it's going to be -15. Going back to that times thing, Math Lab might have still the time things, but I'm just not going to use it anymore because it's not really good practice. -2 times -8. Okay, so now I have 2 negatives. So 8 times 2 is 16. The question is it positive or negative? Well, a positive times a negative times a negative is a positive. So positive 16. When I think multiplying, I think 2 negatives together come together and make a plus. So the negatives come together and they make a plus when you're multiplying. 3, -10 times 12. And -10 times 12 is 120. And then negative times a positive, negative wins, there's one of each, -120. Four times 6. Well, 4 times 6 is 24, and they're both positive, so it stays positive, positive 24. 5, -6 times -7. So 7 times 6 is 42. My signs, a negative times a negative, they come together when they multiply and become a positive, so it's positive 42. negative 9 times 4. 9 times 4 is 36, but I have a negative times a positive, and negative will always win when you're multiplying. When it's one of each, so negative 36. All right, so that's basic. We're gonna go, I'm gonna add a little more. We're gonna multiply 3 things. Questions? I forgot what number I'm on again. 7, I'm on 7. Okay, 7. All right, 8 times negative 6 times negative 2. Just like order of operations, you should do left to right whenever whatever comes first with multiplying. So I'm gonna do this first. 8 times 6 is 48, but a positive times a negative, the negative will win. So it's negative 48 times negative 2. Now I don't need that times, but I put times in there to remind me. Now I'm gonna multiply 48 times 2. So what's 48 times 2? 48 times 2. 8 times 2 is 16. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 is 9. 96, is it positive or negative? And negative times a negative comes together, it makes a positive. So positive 96. Now, there's also another way to do the same problem. I'm gonna do the same thing again, but I'm gonna do it a little different way. And it really depends on what you'd like. This is a personal preference of how you wanna think about these. So what I did first was I multiplied, put the right sign in front, I multiplied and multiplied. So there's also another way to think about it, which some people like better. So first you look at the signs. What's a positive times a negative times a negative? Well, positive times a negative, so I'm thinking of positive times a negative times, I'm writing it down so you can see it. I don't write this, I don't usually write this down. I just don't write it down to see what I'm thinking about. So I have a positive 8, that's a positive, a negative 6, a negative, and a negative 2. So what is a positive times a negative times a negative? So a positive times a negative is a negative, and a negative times a negative is a positive. So in the very beginning, I know the answer is positive. And then I don't think about it again, and I just do my numbers and know it's 96. So you have to practice each way. Do you like to do the signs first and then the numbers? Or do you want to do the numbers first and then think about the signs? What do you want to do it in order? I'm just throwing out there in case you want to do, you like that idea first. I always like to give options just in case. All right, so we have 5 times negative 2 times negative 3 times 6. Okay, if I want to do the signs first, I would go, okay, positive times a negative is a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a positive is a positive. But I know the answer is going to be positive, but we'll do this first. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. I'm going to write down the other 2, negative 3 and 6. Then I'm going to multiply these 2, and negative 10 times a negative 3, that becomes a positive, that's 30 times 6. And then 30 times 6, 6 times 3 is 18, add a 0, 180. Hey, side note, did you guys know this? That when you have something like that, all you have to do is multiply the numbers, 6 times 3 is 18, and then add a 0 to it. So if you had, let's say, I'm off topic, but that's all right. Let's say I had 9,000 times 20, right? Watch this. 9 times 2 is 18. And then count how many zeros you have. 1, 2, 3, it'd be 4 zeros. 180,000. It's a real quick way to do big numbers, in case you didn't know. 10. Oh, exponents back. Exponents. Woo. All right, so what does -2 to the third mean? If you remember, it means -2 3 times, right? So I'm going to write it out. -2 times -2 times -2. That's exactly what -2 to the third means. -2 multiplied 3 times. And now we can figure it out. -2 times -2 is 4, positive 4, times -2, which is -8. I'm going to show you something in a minute with exponents and negative and positive. So 11 is also an exponent. -1 to the 6th power. All right, that means the same thing except 6 times, right? So -1 times -1 times -1 times -1 times -1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times -1. 6 negative ones. All right, one at a time. -1 times -1 is 1. This is a long way to do it. I'll show you a shortcut in a minute. Then 1 times -1 is -1. And then -1 times -1 is 1. 1 times -1 is -1. And -1 times -1 is 1. All that work to get 1. Oof. Okay. I'm going to my next page. I'm going to show you a little shortcut with these. Everybody have that down? I'll give you a minute. I know I did it real fast. I see a couple. Some of you are right. Yep, good. Some of you are still writing. Everyone's yawning. Am I that boring? Is it really that boring?
No, I'm thinking everybody is just tired. And then after that, people, they be going to work right after class or whatever they gotta do.
I know. I see like everyone's like, oh. I know
It's
it can be
so
dry and
early for
boring.
me.
It's only for me too. My other job, I work pretty late. Like I go to bed like 2 in the morning. So it's a little crazy. So I get it. I get it. Just funny. I looked up and everyone, almost every other one people was yawning at one time. It was sort of funny. Okay, so a little thing about exponents and negatives. This will save you a lot of time too. So we're talking about odd and even, odd exponent versus an even exponent. And you have a negative number. I'm just going to put the number sign. Like if you have a negative number to an odd power, it's always going to be a negative number answer. Because a negative times a negative times a negative, and I can keep going, but 3 is odd, right? So a negative times a negative is a positive, times a negative is going to be a negative. And I could keep going. I could add 2 more, it's going to be a negative. Add 2 more, it's a negative. So if you have an odd power, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, the answer is going to be negative all the time. But if you have an even power, 2, 4, 6, 8, the answer is always going to be a positive number. And I can show you just with a 2. Negative times negative is positive. If I have a negative times a negative times a negative times a negative, it's going to be a positive. So as long as it's an even power, it's positive. An odd power, it's odd. So if I do the following, -2 to the 5th power, I know without doing a thing, the answer is negative. It's odd, right? I can figure this one out too. 2, I'll use my fingers. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. So it's -32. But if I have -2 to the 4th power, I know the answer is going to be positive. I'm going to write a plus just to remind me, but you normally don't write a plus. You just know it's positive. So let's do this right figure. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So if you can remember that even is always going to be positive with an exponent, and it's odd, it'll always be negative. It'll save you a lot of time than having to write them all out like we just did. Notice though, I'm going to put this in color, that I have parentheses, right? What I'm talking about is when they're in parentheses to an even or odd power. So the question is, this is an exception. I'm going to do it in color so it stands out. Be very careful of problems like this. All right, is that -2 in parentheses? No. So this is saying, this problem right here is saying that only the 3 is to the third, only the 2 is to the third power. So this is saying like this, -2 times 2 times 2. It's not -2 times -2 times -2. This is separate. This is separate. This is not in parentheses. The only thing the power goes to is the 2. So this is going to be -2, but negative times 2 times 2 times 2. So it'd be 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8, -8. If I had -3 squared, that is not in parentheses. You do not have the -3 together in parentheses. So it's saying it's -3 times 3, which is 3 times 3 is 9, but it's a negative, so -9. Versus if I have this.
So if it's not in parentheses, then only the first number is negative?
Yes.
Okay.
And if it's in parentheses, this is different. This is saying 2 -3s. That would be 9. See the difference between them? Parentheses means all the difference between the answer. Okay, I want to give you a couple to practice on next page. Any questions before I do? Okay, I'm going to new page. Just a couple to practice.